Greetings and welcome back to room 303 at AP English, and we turn now in our study of the Odyssey to Book 6. Many readers of the Odyssey have reported that this is maybe their favorite book. This is the Princess Nasik and the stranger, obviously, Odysseus. It really is a book of two classic examples of amazing speech-giving rhetoric. We'll try and figure out in the end of this one who plays whom, right? Okay, so as we now enjoin Book 6, let's remind, if you haven't been following our lectures, learnstrong.net, you want to hit that, and you want to spend a few minutes watching our other lectures. Let's review kind of where we've been, just to remind. The first 4 books of the Odyssey are those ones that deal specifically with Telemachus, and then the next 4 books deal with Odysseus away from home, obviously, and trying to find a way to get back home. Book 1, the invocation of the muse. We hear that Odysseus is a man of twists and turns. We meet Athena, who is, of course, going to play a huge role in this poem. We'll see more of this in Book 6. As Mentis, she will go to Ithaca. She will give Telemachus his mission. At line 340 of Book 1, she tells him, it's time for you to grow up. Call the assembly. Book 2, he does call the assembly. He's mocked by the suitors there. In the middle of it, there's these eagles that will contest and fight, and the explanation is that Odysseus is coming back. The suitors will have none of it. Telemachus, at the end of this book, will leave with Mentor as Athena and head off in search of information about his father. Of course, this is Telemachus's Bildungsroman, his coming-of-age story, and of course his Odyssey. Book 3, we have Telemachus with Nestor at Pylos. There he will be told some information. Athena will change into an eagle and fly away, and this will lead Nestor to say to Telemachus, you have great kinds of help here from you, the gods. He will offer his son Pisistratus to Telemachus, and they will leave, headed off to Sparta to find Menelaus and Helen. Book 4, Telemachus does find Menelaus and Helen. We open with a wedding at the beginning. Things are amazing in Menelaus' palace, and Helen will use drugs to kind of make the men all forget their sorrows. There's different stories of Odysseus that are told. They're fascinating stories, as we talked about in Book 4. And finally, at the end, the information that Menelaus will give, coming from Proteus, the shape changer, is that Odysseus is alive. Now, whether he's still alive or not, we don't know. Meanwhile, back on Ithaca, the suitors are ready to kill Telemachus when he returns, and Penelope is beside herself with grief until she gets her famous vision to tell her everything's going to be okay. Book 5, we meet Odysseus for the first time. We begin, of course, with Athena and Zeus sending Hermes to say to Calypso, it's time for Odysseus to be released. At first she's mad, ultimately she relents. She helps Odysseus build his raft. Poseidon, mad at Odysseus for reasons that will become more clear actually in books to come, tries to drown Odysseus. Ino will help with the veil, and ultimately Odysseus is washed up onto the island of the Phaeacians. Now that's where we pick up then with book number 6. Now, just to remind, the idea here is that hopefully you've been using learnstrong.net and that AP folder, but you're reading this information on your own and then coming to my information as help. That's the hope. Our learning theory always we articulate the connecting of new information to old information in meaningful ways. We do that in our reading annotative work by asking 3 guiding questions of our reading. At level 1, what does the text say? Summarizing. At level 2, what does the text mean? At 2A, messages, themes. At 2B, rhetoric. We're concentrating on symbolism and irony in our study here of the Odyssey, just like we did with our study of the Iliad, right? And then finally at level 3, we ask the question, how can I relate to this information in some meaningful way? At 3A, relate to other texts, especially the Iliad, because we've done our guided study of the Iliad. Now we're ready to try and see some connections. And then finally at 3B, how can I somehow own this material, right? It's sometimes fun, let me just give you an example of this. It's sometimes fun to ask, what happened in the Iliad in the same book? For example, in Iliad 6, we have that important conversation between Hector and Andromache, his wife, behind the walls of Troy. Interestingly, in Odyssey 6, we have an important conversation between a male, Odysseus, and a female, Nausicaa, right? And so to that degree, it's kind of always fun to pay attention to the ways that these two poems sometimes can stand side by side. All right, let's do a real quick, brief overview of Book 6, and then we'll get into some of the lines. First of all, we have Athena at work again for the second time, the third time, right? Think about it. Athena comes to visit in a dream. Telemachus, of course, Penelope, and here it will be the young Nausicaa, who is the daughter of the king of the Phaeacians, Alcyoneus, right? What happens next is she's told, go and wash clothes. It's time for you to consider marriage. Think about the ways in which Athena will say to Nausicaa what, in fact, she has said to Telemachus. It's time that you grow up. You'll remember that this was said, right? Then we will have Nausicaa going to talk to her daddy. We have indulgent fathers talking with the daughters that they love. And here we're going to see the same gig being played, right? Think about Homer, of course, and daddies and their girls. We have positive and negative examples. We think of course, Agamemnon sacrificing his own daughter Iphigenia, later telling Achilles in Iliad 9, I will even offer Achilles one of my own daughters if he'll only come back and fight this wretched war. We have obviously as well Zeus and Athena as father and daughter, right? We had, of course, Menelaus, who was marrying off his daughter Hermione, he and Helen's daughter, right? So always paying attention, which is fascinating because we don't have a lot of father-daughters going on in the Iliad, although we do have, you'll remember, of course, the priest of Apollo at the beginning of the Iliad asking for Chryseis' daughter back from Agamemnon, being refused, and of course then praying to Apollo, and we have a lot of plague stuff going on. We then have Nausicaa, who will, of course, Daddy says, absolutely, I'll let you go and wash clothes down at the river. We have Nausicaa, who will then go with her girls to the shore of the river. There they will wash the clothes, they'll bathe, they'll play ball games and that kind of thing. They wake up Odysseus. Odysseus wakes up at line 130 and immediately says, man of misery, where am I? Right? Okay, so in other words, we got the same gig being played where Odysseus is never quite sure exactly what's going on. Okay? He will, we are told, cover his private parts, and in one of the more interesting moments in all of poetry of the ancient Greeks, he will come out from behind the trees where he's been sleeping with his private parts covered. James Joyce had an observation to make about this being the first example of the European man, right? Conscientious of his not showing his privates. And he goes up to Nausicaa and he asks for help. Of course, all the girls run away. Not Nausicaa, though, because of her dream with Athena, right? We have this amazing speech where Odysseus will flatter her. He assures her that he won't hurt her in any kind of sexual way or otherwise. And then he will finally ask for help, right? They will take care of him. They offer to bathe him. He says, that's quite all right, I'll take care of it for myself. In other words, Nausicaa understands Xenia, that notion of the guest-host relationship, hospitality, right? Nausicaa decides Odysseus, right, is her soon-to-be husband, and Athena makes Odysseus look even more remarkable. Then we will have the suggestion by Nausicaa that Odysseus, at line 280, needs to listen to what she has to say, okay? She says she is the one who will give the information. She's in control, in other words, right? She says, we can't have any jealous Phaeacians wanting to know about what man it is, stunningly handsome man it is, that I'm showing up at the king's castle with, and maybe soon to be my husband. She's brilliant in the way she's able to suggest to Odysseus, you ought to think long and hard about maybe marrying me, right? And then she says, follow us to the city. But once we get to the city, drop off, go into Athena's orchard there, we'll go in, and then I'm telling you how to approach my mom and dad. Go past my father, drop down on your knees, supplicate to mom, and then you'll get all kinds of help to get a ride home. Finally, at the end of this book, Odysseus is sitting in Athena's grove. There he will pray, and in true Odysseus form, he will say, help them show some mercy and some love that I may find my way home. This is interesting that he uses the word mercy because Odysseus will show none to, of course, the suitors at the end. And rarely is the word love used in either the Iliad or the Odyssey, and Homer will decide to use it, right? And in the end, we will finish this book, 6, with Odysseus ready to go in and to supplicate and beg for help. Let's turn now to a few of the lines, and this is one of those books where I would love to be able to just read all of this with you, but I just don't have the time. So let's go to it right away. First of all, we will have Athena's appearance to Nasik in her dream, at line 25. She says, Nasik, how could your mother bear a careless child like you, a careless girl like you? Look at your fine clothes lying here, neglected, with your marriage not far off, the day you should be decked in all your glory. We think of Kleos, right? And offer elegant dress to those whom form your escort. In other words, let's point out, the first thing to point out is that a young girl has clothes lying all over her bedroom. Having raised 2 daughters myself, I can tell you that this is not unusual, although I will tell you that my son was every bit as bad or worse, okay? But notice here, hey, what are you doing? Why are you letting these clothes get all dirty? Number 2, notice she suggests it's time for you to start thinking about marriage. This is absolutely no way for a soon-to-be bride to be acting. Let's point out for your notes that Athena will say something very similar to Telemachus in, it's time to grow up, it's time for you to get to work. To continue, she says, that's how a bride's good name goes out across the world. It brings her father and queenly mother joy. Come. Let's go wash these clothes at the break of day. I'll help you, lend a hand, and the work will fly. You won't stay unwed long. So, in her speech, Athena is saying to Nasik, it's time for you to seriously consider that you're not a little girl anymore. It's time for you to grow up. Which will, of course, help to explain why, in this exchange, Nasik will, in fact, act in very mature kinds of ways. She will, of course, go to her father, and when she is with her father there, she will say it at line 62, Daddy dear, I wonder, won't you have them harness a wagon for me, the tall one with the good smooth wheels, so I can take our clothes to the river for washing, lovely things, but lying before me all soiled, and you yourself sitting among the princes debating points at your council, you really should be wearing spotless linen. Then you have 5 sons, full grown in the palace. We're going to meet them later on in the poem. 2 of them married, but 3 are lusty bachelors, always demanding crisp shirts fresh from the wash when they go out to dance. Look at my duties, that all rests on me. So she coaxed, too shy, interestingly that's said of Telemachus as well, to touch on her hopes for marriage, young, warm hopes in her father's presence. But he saw, we're told, through it all, and answered quickly, I won't deny you the mules, my darling girl. I won't deny you anything. This will remind us that earlier Zeus said fundamentally the exact same thing to Athena. We're seeing these mirrored kind of images throughout these poems of Homer, right? So we look for it and we see it and we go, oh yeah, we've seen this before, right? I won't deny you anything. Off you go, and the men will harness a wagon, the tall one with the good smooth wheels, fitted out with cradle on the top. So we're told that Alcyoneus will allow for the young girl to go off by herself without male supervision, to go off and to go take care of laundry and down at the shoreline. Now, let's point out for your notes that much has been made of the fact that girls going off by themselves down by the shore, this is kind of dangerous business, because here pirates can, of course, abduct and steal or whatever. This tells us something about Alcyoneus, the king of the Phaeacians. He has total trust in the safety of his kingdom. Let's put it in our notes. The land of the Phaeacians is kind of like a dream land where everything is amazing, and they practice fully Xenia in every way. All right? So off they go. And the mom will provide the treats and the snacks, and off they go, right? Down to the river they go, reminding us at line 100 or so that this is where they go to wash. And it immediately reminds us of those 2 springs of the Xanthos or the Scamander River outside of Troy in the Iliad. Same gig where women go to wash, right? And we're told at line 105 or so, once they bathed, smoothed their skin with oil, took their picnic, sitting along the river's banks, waiting for all the clothes to dry in the hot noon sun, fed to their heart's content, the princess and her retinue threw their veils to the wind. This, of course, is again going to remind us of Andromache dropping her veil at the end of the Iliad. There's all kinds of symbolism potentially at play here that could be kind of sexual rendering as well. The unveiling. In other words, the girls don't know that they're going to be intruded on by men, and so they get to behave as they wish. And then a game of ball commences. White-armed Nausicaa, we're told, led their singing, dancing beat, and as lithe as Artemis with her arrows striding down from a high peak. This won't be the last time we'll hear about Artemis and Nausicaa, right? Odysseus then, in one of the most famous scenes of all of Homer, wakes up, right? Why? Well, the princess tosses a ball to a maid. The girl misses it. It splashes in the pool, and they all shout out, and we're told that this does wake Odysseus, the great Odysseus, at line 130. He set up with a start. Any of you that will ask this question later at 3B, who have ever kind of woken up and you're like, whoa, whoa, where am I? That's how he does it. Puzzling, his heart pounding, and he begins immediately to speak to himself, more self-talk. And he says it this way: man of misery, that's what he likes to call himself. Whose land have I lit on now? What are they here? Violent, savage, lawless, or friendly to strangers, God-fearing men? Listen, shouting, echoing around me, women, girls, or the nymphs who haunt the rugged mountaintops and the river springs and meadows lush with grass? Or am I really close to people who speak my language? Notice the series of questions. Odysseus is the kind of man who always is calculating. Yes? Always calculating. The minute he wakes up, immediately, first questions, right? What's going on? How can I be hurt? Suspicious, always, and hopeful at the same time. He says, up with you. See how the land lies. See for yourself now. Listen, up with you, or up on your feet. We will meet again when we are with our Dante in Inferno. Several times in Inferno, Virgil has to say, come on, come on, come on, let's go, up with you, right? Muttering so, great Odysseus crept out of the bushes, stripping off with his massy hand a leafy branch from the tangled olive growth to shield his body, hid his private parts. In an exchange, James Joyce, the great writer, and of course the writer of the great novel Ulysses, we'll have more to say about this later in AP English, in a conversation with Arthur Powers called Conversations with Joyce, actually Joyce, tongue-in-cheek, said that here, in this moment, European fashion is born. That notion of covering your private parts to show respect to the young girl. Well, I'll leave that one up to you. Anyway, covers his private parts. Ali stalked, and then we get this interesting simile at line 143. As a mountain lion, exultant in his power, strides through wind and rain and his eyes blaze, and he charges sheep or oxen or chases wild deer, but his hunger drives him on to go for flocks, even to raid the best defended homestead. So Odysseus moved out. Again, these epic similes, we don't see as many of them in the Odyssey as we do in the Iliad. And here, it's an interesting one. As he steps out of the woods, and he starts walking towards Nausicaa, all the other girls have run away. He will do it like a mountain lion who is out looking for some kind of beast to kill. About to mingle, we're told, with these lovely girls, naked now as he was, for the need drove him on, a terrible sight, all crusted, caked with brine. In other words, he looks terrible, right? They scattered in panic down the jutting beaches. Only Alcyone's daughter held fast, for Athena planted courage within her heart, dissolved the trembling in her limbs, and she firmly stood her ground and faced Odysseus, torn now. And Odysseus is, of course, always stuck between two options. We commented on this in the last book. We will see it again. We're actually going to see it throughout the entire Odyssey, okay? You'll remember at the very beginning of the Odyssey, I pointed out that at the very end, Odysseus has in front of him the priest and the poet, and he has to decide what he's going to do with both. It is a symbol that Odysseus is constantly having to make his decisions between two options. Here are his options. Should he fling his arms around her knees, supplicant, the young beauty, plead for help, or stand back, plead with a winning word, beg her to lead him to the town and lend him clothing? In other words, should he run up and do what we saw in the Iliad many, many times, right? Where a warrior will fall on the knees, grab around the knees, look up, sometimes even grab the beard, expose the neck. In other words, be vulnerable. But he thinks twice about this because obviously he's a big, strong guy and she's a young girl, right? This, he seems to think, was the better way, he thought. Plead now with a subtle, winning word, rhetoric, right? And stand well back. Don't clasp her knees. The girl might bridle, yes. He launched in at once. It's an interesting verb, launch, right? Because it tells us about the Odyssey within the Odyssey. He launched in at once, endearing, sly, and suave. Now, this is going to be the first of 2 speeches in this book that we're going to study closely. Scholars and readers of this poem have pointed out long ago that this is genius, the way Odysseus is able to do several things simultaneously. He's able to convince Nausicaa she doesn't have to worry about him. He's able to flatter her. We're going to comment the ways in which Odysseus knows how to use his sexuality, the way Helen knows how to use her sexuality as well. It's quite fascinating. Let's see what he does to compliment Nausicaa and make her want to help him, right? He says it this way. Here I am at your mercy, princess. Are you a goddess or a mortal? So right away, he flatters her by suggesting that maybe she's not even human. If one of the gods who rule the skies up there, you're Artemis to the life, the daughter of mighty Zeus. It's significant that he says Artemis, by the way, and not Aphrodite, who he could have said. Artemis, of course, is the young chaste virgin who will not be interested in guys throughout all of Greek mythology. In other words, what Odysseus is suggesting is, I am aware that you are not interested in anything like sex. In other words, I will treat you well and you can be safe around me, right? I see her now, Artemis. Just look at your build, your bearing, your lithe, flowing grace. So in other words, when we study Lord Byron's She Walks in Beauty Like the Night of Cloudless Climes and Starry Skies and all that's best to me, blah, 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 we'll play this same game back again. In other words, the idea is, wow, I've never seen anyone as stunningly beautiful as you, right? But, he says, if you are one of the mortals living here on earth, 3 times blessed are your father and your queenly mother.